Tullas, if you look back over the past hour, simply a case one imagines of a very well-worn can being kicked up the road once again.
Is that we've worked as speedily as possible to prepare for the trial, to change all this narrative that the former president does not want to go for trial. We've demonstrated today to everyone that the former president is ready and is willing to face his accusers. He came here to court at great risk to his own health because of his respect for the court. Yeah. So we should all be happy that the former president is saying to the whole of South Africa that he wants to deal with this matter once and for all. That is the thing that we've said from the beginning, that the former president has removed all obstacles so that he can face his accusers. In fact, you have seen today, it is the state itself that has excuses about why the trial can be held in October.
Yeah. And lastly, let me ask you about how much further you're going to take your concerns around the judge president and the communication with the lead prosecutor, Mr. Downer.
Well, we're waiting for a response from the judge president. It is only once we've received the response from the judge president then we can assess the explanation. You've heard our counsel ask, in fact, there are two issues. Whether there were further other communications between Mr. Downer and the judge president. Those are the issues that we've asked, and we think our client has a legitimate right to ask for those interests. We hope that we understand that the judge president is busy, but we await patiently for that explanation. You've heard our counsel saying on record, we're waiting for the explanation. We may well accept the explanation, or if our client is not happy with the explanation, he will exercise his rights, including reporting the matter to the Judicial Service Commission, as is his right.
Yeah. Mr. Mabuza, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your patience, and I do understand you do need to get going because you do have another meeting. That's Eric Mabuza there. He's the attorney for former President Jacob Zuma, coming out of court and basically just giving us the inside track in as far as they are thinking around these issues that transpired today before the matter was actually stood down to the 8th of September there, Jeremy, for it to continue on the 8th of September. It's really this toing and froing around getting this matter to a point where it is, quote, certified as trial ready, because it cannot then be set down for an actual start of trial date until it is certified as trial ready as per the directives of the judge president.
Tullas, did you sense a certain degree of frustration as far coming from Jacob Zuma's legal team as you spoke to Eric Mabuza?
Oh, without a doubt, they are absolutely a bit frustrated. One of the key indicators of that is Advocate Moses Kakane referring to what's happening here as the state's ever-shifting goalposts, and basically saying we are here to save face for the state that he says has ran a narrative that Mr. Zuma was the one who was delaying the start of the trial. Well, they are now basically, in a way, it's almost daring the state to say, you've been saying you are ready, we are now ready, and now you are talking about moving the matter and only hearing it at the beginning of 2021, well, certainly before today's proceedings that appeared to be the disposition of the state. So they are absolutely frustrated at this point, to the point, Jeremy, that they are now saying there was a bit of that spanner in the works that came into it with Thales indicating that they are seeking a review application. They've not launched it yet, but they are saying they will be launching a review application, certainly in as far as the issue of the racketeering charge, where they are saying that there are certain documents that they simply want to have a look at, that they would want that racketeering charge to be reviewed, because they're saying that that constitutes about 90% of the charges against Thales, and therefore they'll be seeking a review therein, which could have an impact on this matter, where they're charged together, Thales that is, charged together with former President Jacob Zuma. And then you heard there Moses Kakane in reaction that it might be not a decision taken yet, no instructions from Mr. Zuma yet on that matter, but it might be that this could lead them to a point where they say, actually proceed as the state against our client, being Mr. Zuma, even if it means you separate the matters with Thales. So they are keen from their side and basically want this matter to go to trial before the end of this year.
The defence, Tula says, was in fact so frustrated with proceedings that it asked for the case at one point to be struck from the roll, but the judge was having none of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Moses Kakane indicating that actually that's one of the options that are available, and it's key for us to flag and say there is an option that is available according to Moses Kakane, but no substantive application being made in that regard. You'll know that that procedure is that, and this is something you and I have learned from observation, that they bring a substantive application for the matter to be struck off the roll, as they did previously, all those many years ago. So the judge saying that you're not bringing a substantive application for the matter to be struck off the roll. He was laying out the available options to say, actually, this does remain an option, that it could be removed from the roll, and when the state is ready to proceed, they could come back and re-enroll the matter.
Just away from the legal proceedings, Tula says, where we had the former president in court, he has now left. Is anything planned this afternoon?
Not at all. I did hear some chants just on the street in front of us. I didn't get the details of, who are the people that are there in terms of who's chanting out there. It wasn't a major, event or organized occasion as we've seen previously. We are operating under this new normal, as we are calling it, as many people are calling it. Also, part of that new normal as well is that in terms of the weight of political office bearers that have come through to support former President Jacob Zuma, you are starting to see that a little bit more. I did see Super Zuma being here. You did see people such as Mthandeni Dlungwana being here. You saw Nomagugu Simelane Zulu also being among the people who are political office bearers who have been here and were attending this particular case. So you are starting to see that, because there's my colleague Siphamandla Goke telling me that there's been this conversation between the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal and the National Executive Committee about what do we do about our continued support for former President Jacob Zuma without, contradicting the position of the ANC about supporting leaders who are facing corruption charges. And it seems there's been that sort of accommodation to say, actually, you can express your political support for him.
I'm correct in saying there was a small hiccup before proceedings started with the judge not wanting to appear in front of a camera?
You're absolutely correct. Judge Kate Pillay not so keen to be on camera. The reasons there not so clear, Jeremy, but it does seem it is about issues of own security and basically privacy, I would imagine, not wanting to be exposed. And in fact, at no point did we have the cameras on the judge there. It's one of those situations that I suppose the office of the Chief Justice would have to attend to and basically give guidance in terms of how do you deal with such a situation, and what are the reasons? Are there underlying reasons why Judge Pillay would prefer not to be on camera? Is this something that happens often in terms of the judges saying, in fact, I'm getting a signal, Jeremy, that we are about to be joined by Ndumiseni Ntuli, who is the Provincial Secretary of the ANC. He actually joins me now. Let me bring him into the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ntuli. And I'm going to stand a bit of a distance away from you because, as you see, I wasn't anticipating that I would be in interaction and the mask is not on my face. So standing far from you, but take me close to the thinking politically around this matter of supporting former President Jacob Zuma. There was a point where we started seeing that the top leadership in the province were not actually coming through to join and join the supporters, but it seems you are coming back. What is the thinking around you expressing your support for former President Jacob Zuma?
Well, I have to say that since the time at which the top leadership of our movement, the national officials, gave us a permission to have a way in which we can interact with the situation in this court case. We've always been here. There's only one occasion where neither myself nor the provincial chairperson or any of our officials were able to make it to court. And I know that because of our absence on that day, there was some wrong notion that our absence is a consequence of a decision we have taken no longer to come back to the court. Of course, that was predicated on the wrong assumption that our absence was because we were no longer in support or no longer consistent with the decision we had taken. I want to assure you and everybody else who's following this case that the leadership of the ANC in the province remains steadfast on the position it has adopted, which was ultimately supported by the national officials of our movement, that we must never allow that this case must be used as a platform other than for what it is in order to be exploited by forces that were emerging regularly, not only to impinge the integrity of the African National Congress, but equally to undermine its own elected leadership led by President Zuma.
So there you're talking about the non-ANC structures that became a common feature in the recent months at this particular hearing.
That's correct. There were people who would come to show their support to the former president, which is quite correct. We have no problem with that. The only time where we were concerned about the manner in which they were demonstrating their support is when there was a clear intention through their public statements, sentiments and display of certain placards that were causing the harm and the damage to the reputation and the integrity of the African National Congress and our own leadership, the National Executive Committee. And that is why we said to our national leadership, let's not allow any platform created through the case of the former president to be abused in a manner that undermines the very same movement that the former
Lastly, though, let me ask you, Mr. Nduli, how do you then reconcile the fact that former President Jacob Zuma believes that there are traitors, and not his exact words, but something to that effect that says there are people in the ANC and in the broader tripartite alliance movement who want to, if I can also use these words, do him in a way, using court processes such as this trial. That distrust. In fact, today, Edward Zuma talking about you work with snakes, you live with snakes, not realizing that these people are snakes. How do you reconcile that with your support? Does your support extend to sharing that view that there are many in the ANC and the alliance who seek to do him in through processes such as this court process?
No, we certainly are not part to that narrative and to that perspective. It may very well be that that is a view that is held by the former president and his family on the basis of probably some of the things that we may not be exposed to as we are not part of the family. But as a political family to President Zuma, we are not aware of any absolute, concrete and confirmed existence of any forces within the ANC who are at work to either undermine him or to ensure that he's ultimately incarcerated. So as the leadership of the ANC, we would prefer that we deal with the issues on the basis of what is our own disposal, and politically to understand that the case has evolved for some times, and throughout its journey and its evolution there were many things that have been said and done by certain people, some of which we may not be exposed to as a leadership of the organization. But our view is very concrete that let's ensure that this case does not in any way contribute to the divisions in our movement or to impinge the reputation and the standing of the African National Congress.
Thank you so much for that. That's Mdumiseni Nduli. He is the provincial secretary of the ANC there, Jeremy, giving us the political perspective of why it is that today we saw more senior leaders than we've seen in recent months. It used to be that whenever former President Jacob Zuma would be appearing in court, you would be guaranteed that the top leadership of the ANC in this province would be there. Then we started seeing that trend sort of change slightly, and he has just given us the explanation of why it is that we are seeing now that they are recommitting to their support for the former president.
All right, Thulasizwe Simelane in Pietermaritzburg. We'll circle back to you a little later.